the greatest thing is that our metabolism is adaptive, but that can go in your favor or that can work against you depending on what you're doing.
Julie, thank you so much for joining me today. I am super excited to talk about this topic.
Yes, me too. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to share any sort of valuable knowledge for your audience.
Well, we have a lot in common, but I don't even know, maybe you do, maybe you don't. How did we connect? I mean, other than Instagram.
I don't know. I know we follow a lot of the same people, but I was just looking back, and in 2016, I actually purchased your virtual business academy. Way back when we first started our business. We actually started in 2013, but that was when we were really looking for like virtual online, how to like hire personal assistants and virtual assistants. And so I initially took that course, and then I think from there, I mean, I know we know a lot of the same people. I was in the mastermind with Lewis House and a lot of people in common in California there. So I
That's
mean, other
awesome.
than that, I love following
I just
you.
love following you on Instagram. I mean, that's where I've really like become a fan and love the content that you post. And not that this is an episode about Instagram, but I'm always telling people if you really want to make your mark, like just be known for one thing for a little while, and then you can
Yeah.
branch off and do all the things. But like you do such a great job of, I just know if I'm going to see your content that it's going to make me feel good. It's going to help me understand my body. And I just think you do such a great job of that. In fact, like, I mean, I love that you even talk about hair and the mental side of nutrition, and that you share so much of your story. So for those of people who haven't been following you and aren't familiar with your story, tell us a little bit about your own history with diet and exercise.
Yeah. Yeah. So previously, I mean, I struggled with an eating a body image disorder for years of my life. I can remember even in high school struggling with it, being on the cheerleading squad and just feeling the pressure of being in front of people and being the Enneagram number 3 that I am, such a perfectionist and people pleaser. I felt really out of control in a lot of areas of my life, like family life. And so I think I took that out on wanting to control my diet and wanting to control my exercise. And so really, undereating and over-exercising was the name of the game for a long time of my life. And then going into college, still not really knowing anything when it comes to nutrition and training. And so just doing what I saw in magazines, which was endless amounts of cardio, restricting my caloric intake. And then from there, I met my husband after I graduated college, and he really was the first person to, number one, as a boyfriend at the time, kind of ask me honestly if I had an eating disorder. And that was the first time that someone really had bluntly asked me, especially someone that, I was dating at the time. So it was kind of an
How did
awkward
you,
situation.
can I ask do you remember your first thought when he asked that question? Were you defensive?
Yes. Very defensive and very like, why do you care? This is not something, that you need to know about type of pushing it off. But then something inside of me was like, okay, he's actually asking from a place of love. And it was like inside, I wanted everything in me to be better because I was so over like just feeling so consumed by it all. But yeah, so I remember having mixed feelings. Like, this is crazy that you're asking me bluntly on our first date, but this is
Oh,
also like total divine thing. And so I felt safe in that time. And, he was one of the first people that I actually said, yeah, I'm really struggling. I don't know what to do when it comes to nutrition. I feel so out of control in my body. And I feel like I'm constantly trying to control it and it's just not working in my favor. And I was just exhausted mentally, physically. My hair was not growing. My skin was constantly breaking out and I felt bloated all the time. And it was just like, there was things in my body that were not working properly. And so I'm so grateful that he did ask that, because that's what he studied in college. He studied health and exercise science and sports nutrition. And so he was very, very interested in helping people in terms of nutrition. And he really taught me, I mean, everything that I know when it comes to nutrition. He taught me so much in training. I was so scared of weights and only doing cardio, endless amounts of cardio, and restricting my caloric intake so low. And so he really got me into like, okay, we gotta, you know, that you need to start eating protein, because on our first date, I had a salad and I'm like pushing aside the carrots and the chicken. And he's like, there is a severe problem with you.
Wow.
So,
Yeah. And it's
um,
interesting how so many women will be able to relate to the story of not feeling good, knowing that I, I I hate the way this is controlling my life and my every thought, and I don't enjoy social interactions, and
mhm,
I'm a prisoner every day thinking about when am I going to exercise? What am I going to eat? Have I eaten too much today? What what's going to happen later tonight? What's going to happen this weekend? And
yeah,
always worrying about these things and being a prisoner to those things, and realizing that it's debilitating and taking over our lives. Yet
yes,
we
yes,
are so afraid to do anything different, for because the fear
mhm,
of letting go, or the fear of gaining a lot of weight for some reason, is scarier than the thought that we might be able to be happy and at peace with our food
mhm.
and our body.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I remember, I mean, it's crazy, but it's not crazy because food is an essential part of our day. So, of course, we're going to be thinking about food. And if you don't have a healthy relationship with food and your body and identifying that, it's everything that you're thinking about, right? We have over 60 to 80,000 thoughts per day. And how many of those thoughts is that consuming because you haven't dealt with it? You haven't learned to properly put yourself in a place where you're teaching yourself like nutrition. And that's kind of where, you know, I felt at peace because I was like, yes, I want to learn about this, because the more that I like tackle this head on and learn about it, I feel like I'll be in control instead of stopping to trying to constantly find control. I will have control because I'm educating myself, and I'll feel empowered around food instead of feeling scared and anxious and all of those feelings that then is a ripple effect with your relationships and all of the social events and all of those things. So, yeah,
Dude, we're on the same
definitely.
page. It is such a it's an easy, simple way to improve your level of confidence and feeling like you're in control, is to just turn to education,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
I always recommend that to people. So at the time, and we definitely want to talk about reverse dieting, but I love setting the stage. Did you look anorexic? Could people look at you and go, oh, she has an eating disorder? Or were you being praised for your discipline? How did that play in?
Yeah. So I mean, I look back now and I definitely feel like I look malnourished. Like my arms were I was just at an unhealthy weight for my height. I'm 5'9", and my lowest was like 105 pounds. So it was very, very low.
Whoa.
But also my weight would fluctuate because I would go from like restrict mode to like eating everything in sight. And then I would just feel so bloated and icky. But at the same time, I managed a salon. And so I was constantly around the industry of physical appearance. And so, people were like, what are you doing? You look so great. And so, in some sense, it was like fueling me.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but there were so many times where I would say thank you, but I would want to scream back, you have no idea the prison that I'm in. Like, I just want you to know that this is not realistic and this is not sustainable. And I am like wanting to get out. But it was like that outward appearance praise. That's what fueled it for a long time. So,
And we really have to be careful about that. It's why I always tell people, I've learned that you can't blame people. It's a natural go-to. When you see
mhm,
someone's lost a lot of weight, even if you're in your mind, you think a negative thought like, wow, they look really bad. They look really gaunt. They look old. They look sick. They look tired. We've been conditioned to say, you look great. What
mhm,
have you been doing? Like, that's what we've been conditioned to do. I have told the story about one of the programs that I had to film, an exercise program, and I was asked to get as lean as possible for this program, and I showed up at death's door. Like I literally, I didn't have the mental capacity to deal with people. I was so irritable, and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think. I was just a wreck. My hair was falling out. I couldn't even drive well. Like I
Yeah.
just, every part of
Yeah.
me was not functioning well. I felt like I was going to die, but I showed up on the set to film that video, and I had like zero energy, and I felt gaunt, and I was depleted of water and everything else. And all I got was massive amounts of praise. Like, you have never looked better.
Mhm.
Wow.
Mhm.
You look great. It's so confusing to say like, okay, so I'm killing myself,
Mhm.
but that's great. Like,
Mhm.
and of course people don't know what you're doing, but it's really confusing. And I think that we have to be really careful, especially to the moms out there and
Mhm.
girlfriends, women, dads, like just be so careful. I just don't even mention someone's weight. Just
Mhm.
talk about energy, talk about anything other than a person's body image. That's my rule of thumb.
Yeah. And I mean, that's all for growing up, I would just look at, covers of magazines, and I didn't see any sort of behind the scenes. They never even shared any of that. They shared the best of the best photo that's most likely photoshopped, like so many things, so many layers to it. And you just see, and it's the same. I mean, now transition that to social media. You're just scrolling on the explore page and you see these very, very lean women, and it's so easy to compare yourself at a healthy state and feeling like, man, I feel good in my relationships. I feel like I have energy. I feel like what I'm doing is sustainable. But yet it's really easy to look at something else very, very lean, scrolling on Instagram and asking yourself, am I doing enough? Is that what I
Right.
should be like? Because you
That's
don't
right.
see, you don't see the behind the scenes. So yeah.
So you start working with him on nutrition, or how
Yes.
did that transition happen?
Yeah, so it was a very slow transition. I mean, it wasn't, I wish it was overnight, but nothing sustainable is overnight. So, I started working with him, and I just started learning like the basics of protein, carbs, and fats, because previously I had just restricted and I didn't even know any sort of concept when it comes to how much to fuel in my body, what to fuel my body. It was just like constant restriction mode of like,
Mm.
oh, it's a fruit, an apple. Okay, I'll have that. And then I was wondering why I was so hungry and why I was so irritable and why my hormones were out of whack. And so I kind of learned for the first, I would say it was like 3 months, I was like kind of immersing myself into the whole nutrition realm. And then, just being a very naive 22-year-old girl, I was like, well, what do you do? What's the next step? And what's the next level in fitness? And I had told myself the next level is a competition. Like, if I really want
Mhm.
to make a name for myself in the fitness industry, it's a fitness competition, it's a bikini competition. And so I decided to prep for my bikini competition, which is not advised whatsoever, coming from a very restricted eating, disordered eating mentality, to going straight into 2-a-day workouts and eating very low carb. For my first competition, I ate, I was eating maybe 1,200 calories. And if that, I was really struggling
Wow.
to lose weight, and
Working
eat.
out twice a day and at 5'9"?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Girl,
Yeah,
girl.
it was
I bet
it
you
was
were pleasant to be around.
no, I was not pleasant, and at that time, I lost my period. Like, my hormones were so, it was like I kind of went into this realm of like wanting to learn more about nutrition, and then I went deep into fitness, and I was like, "Oh, if this is what fitness is." And fitness is going to the gym twice a day, eating as little as possible. But at the time, I was in it. I was like, this is what you need, I'm going to do what I need to do. And I just need to work harder. And it was like the mentality of like being the 1%. And
Mm.
it was just not a healthy mentality. So I ended up getting up on stage. It was like a quick, I think it was 3.5, 4 month prep. And I won third place. And then I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Like, I have been working so hard for this goal, this physique goal, that I, get up on stage and these people judge me. And then now what do I do? Like,
Where do I
there
go
was
from here?
Yeah, there was no kind of transition. So within a matter of 4 weeks post show, I had gained 15 pounds. I was miserable, just like so miserable at my lowest. I would say I was even lower than before because I had seen my body at a stage lean, you know, going from like really having body dysmorphia and then going into weightlifting, feeling a little confident, then going into my competition, seeing my body at stage lean, but knowing that that's not maintainable, then not really feeling in control out of, post show. Cause I'm like, well, I deserve this. I deserve this cookie. I deserve this tub of ice cream. And just, having a horrible mentality with food. And so I hit my rock bottom. I was like, I don't know what to do. I am so messed up. And I had heard this term of, flexible dieting and reverse dieting. And I was like, yeah, whatever. This is not, if I just need to get my head on straight and I just need to do it again. And so I had this kind of like hard mentality to break because I was so ingrained in the ways of dieting patterns.
Yeah.
But I hit rock bottom and I was like, if I want to do this, then I need to hire a coach because I don't know what I'm doing. And that's when I hired my first official coach and he took me from, I was already 15 pounds up my stage weight. And he's like, okay, we need to reverse diet you. And that was the first time
Mm.
that I heard about reverse dieting. And I really was, at rock bottom. I had nowhere to go but up. So I was like, if this is really going to work, then it's great. If not, I can't go any lower. So,
Well,
um,
let's start if we can for those who are
yeah.
listening and help them to understand like, okay, so who is it that might need to consider reverse dieting?
Yeah. So I would say the ideal woman for a reverse diet is someone that has been in a lot of diets. So years and years of yo-yo dieting, lots of dieting patterns. They're eating very low calories. And if that, they're not even able to either number one, maintain it, or two, they just feel like they've completely hit a plateau and they don't know that they can eat any lower because it's already miserable with where they're at. That's one person for a reverse diet. Another person is if you've successfully lost weight, but you're eating a very low amount of calories and you want to get to a higher place where you feel like it's more maintainable without
Yes.
feeling like, the spike of 15 pounds post show because you're just jumping up from, 1,400 calories to 2,000 calories. It's for that woman as well. So it's kind of, I mean, it's very like customized depending on the person, but
Sure.
in general, those are the two women that I primarily work the most with.
So generally speaking, someone who has been chronically restricting their calories
Hmm.
and they've hit a plateau. Someone
Yep.
who has been a chronic dieter and they're afraid of food, they're afraid of nutrition,
Yeah.
they don't really even know how they can continue to maintain this and it's not working anyways. And then the second person who might be well suited for reverse dieting is someone who's maybe they've hit their goal or they've lost the weight and now they're like, okay, am I supposed to maintain this deficit for a long period of time? Or am
Yeah.
I supposed to go back, quote unquote, go off the wagon and
Right.
return to the
Yep.
way I was eating? Like, how do I return to a normal life without gaining all the weight back? Those are the two ideal candidates for reverse dieting. I, on my Instagram stories, asked my audience, what do you want to know or what do you know about reverse dieting? It was really interesting because I've got quite a few people who said, that they would never consider reverse dieting because isn't that just how you gain weight?
Hmm.
Like isn't that just kind of a plan by which to put the weight back on? So there's a lot of misconceptions around reverse dieting. Julie, what do you think are some of the greatest benefits and the reasons
Yeah.
why someone wants to consider reverse dieting?
So, for lack of a better term, I feel like our metabolism has a memory. So, whatever we've done for years and years of our life of, chronic dieting, our metabolism is going to adapt to that. And I always talk about this inside my community like the greatest thing is that our metabolism is adaptive, but that can go in your favor or that can work against you depending on what you're doing. And so it's almost like a mutual fund, right? You're putting the short-term goal of fat loss off for a moment because you're investing in your long-term health, right? So just like you would a mutual fund, you're not spending the money initially, you're investing it in a mutual fund, and eventually you'll reap the benefits of that. It's the similar concept with a reverse diet. So um, I always kind of frame the mentality first of like, first you have to recognize that this is an investment in your long-term health. So for me, I've reverse dieted 4 times and I'm now reaping the benefits 7 years later from that because I was consistent with that. So that's kind of the first like kind of framework that I want to share with reverse dieting because I think women get scared and they think immediately like, oh, I don't want to gain weight. And so just kind of
Mhm.
reframing that mindset there. Your metabolism, like I said, is adaptive. So you can gradually strengthen your metabolism. And that's kind of the idea behind a reverse diet is slowly increasing your metabolic rate as you increase your food with the goal of minimizing body fat gain. So we don't say you're not going
Okay.
to not gain weight, right? But the goal is to gain as little body fat while increasing your caloric intake week by week or a few weeks every few weeks or whatnot, depending on, how aggressive or how conservative you are with your reverse diet.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, another way of thinking about this is it's a healthy way to improve uh, your body composition,
Hmm.
and also at the same time improving your body's ability to burn calories and use calories
Correct.
efficiently without just gaining a bunch of weight.
Yes.
And I think that's I think that's most women's greatest fear is like, well, but if I eat more calories, because we have this mentality around calories,
Hmm.
then I will lose, because it's calories in and calories out. That's what it's been pounded into our heads. But I think we're beginning to recognize that that's not true. It's pretty easy to identify yourself if you're that person who's like lost a lot of weight recently and you're afraid of going back and
Hmm.
you don't know how much longer this is going to be effective for you, because let's face it, it won't be effective long term.
Right.
Restricting it does not work indefinitely. You will gain the weight back. The
Yep.
question is, how do you gain the weight back? How can you gain your body's ability to eat those calories without gaining all the body fat back? But what might be more difficult for women to identify themselves as, how does a woman or a guy, how do we know if we're under eating, assuming we're not tracking our own calories or macros? How
Yeah.
does someone know if they're not consuming enough?
Well, I mean, I can just speak from experience and then working with thousands of women, hair loss, mood swings, hormones are out of whack, lack of energy. I mean, there's so many signs when it comes to our bodies are amazing. And so when we are in sync with our body, we have energy, we feel vibrant, we're able to think clearly, our hormones are working properly. And so it's those daily signs of like, man, my hair is not growing. My skin is kind of like, what's going on with my skin? I am not getting a period. That's maybe something that you're struggling with. You're constantly bloated. You feel fatigued. And I know for me, like I can very much relate to you in college. I remember my professor literally saying, Julie, and I was so in this mental fog that I didn't even recognize that he was speaking to me because I'm like, so in, I was just so fatigued and so fogged. So those are like some basic signs. I mean,
Mm,
obviously there's a long list of things, but on a very basic level, on a day-to-day activities, just not feeling your best and
yeah.
feeling vibrant. Yeah.
And feeling hungry, like
Yes.
you're denying yourself of food, and it's beginning to control. I think, for a lot of women, they recognize how much it's begun to consume their every
Mhm.
thought, and food becomes scary, or certain food groups become scary, and you feel like you're never doing enough and that you're always eating too much. And you probably, for a lot of women, you just cannot understand why you just are not losing weight. You're like, I can't eat less.
Yep.
So if once we've recognized that, okay, I can't continue to do this and I'd like to try reverse dieting. Some of the benefits, obviously, how fun is it to have the freedom to do things like I've heard, and you mentioned on your podcast how great it is to be able to enjoy family and friends and
Yeah.
social interactions and just not have to think or worry about like, am I allowed to eat this? Can I have bread? All of these, like the freedom it brings.
Yes.
How fun is it to be able to eat as many calories as you're now able to eat
Hmm.
and still maintain this beautiful physique? So I'm sold. I want to try it.
Yeah.
Where do I start?
So the thing about reverse dieting is you have to know what your starting point is. I think this is, it's a misconception around the board when people are really scared of tracking their food intake because they're scared they're going to become very obsessive about it. But
Yeah.
I look at tracking your food as the opportunity to know how much to properly fuel your body, right? Like, when your car engine and when your gas in your car is full, it's the same thing. Like, you need to know how much your body needs to function properly. And so the first thing that I always recommend people, if they're interested in reverse dieting, is number one, remembering that it's a long-term game, and number two, you have to know how much you're eating right now. So I
Right now, like,
typically,
and not on like my best behavior, but like literally what am I doing so that I have a
yes,
starting point? Okay.
honest starting point. Like, I always tell people, don't BS this. Like, this is something that I want you to be completely honest with, and tracking what you're eating. So if that's in a macro tracking app, I love those because they're so simple and you can literally just scan a barcode and it pulls it up. But having a great place of knowing where you're starting. So I always recommend people to at least track for 2 to 3 days just to kind of
Okay.
see what their baseline is with how much they're eating, because sometimes they're eating more than they're actually thinking. Like,
Hmm.
well, I'm only eating almonds and I'm eating a salad for lunch and I'm eating this, but they don't recognize the calories that are coming in from the dressing and from the amounts
Cooking
of almonds.
oil and
Yes.
what we're drinking and
Yeah.
all of the things that we're putting in our coffee.
Yep.
It's true.
Yep.
We're like, I just had coffee.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Right. I just had a Starbucks. Was it just a black coffee? No, it was a frappuccino. It's like,
yeah,
so many additional
it
things.
was a milkshake from Starbucks.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got to get that baseline. We have to know where we're starting, and you
Yep.
need to do that honestly. Um, I love my Fitness Pal. What's your favorite tracking app?
Yeah, I personally love my Macros Plus.
Okay.
I think that my Fitness Pal is great. It has a huge database, so that can be a lot less intimidating for people starting out. My Macros Plus it's getting better in terms of the database, and I just feel like it's very user friendly,
Mm.
without all the fluff, which is why I love it.
People are afraid to track, but it's really quick and it's easy, and it'll take you maybe an hour or so to figure out exactly how to use an app. Not even that. I'm
Yeah.
over exaggerating. It would take my mom an hour or so to use the app. But then after that, like you get the hang of it and it's kind of fun. But Julie, what do you say to the people? Because I get this a lot that really get angry that I suggest that at least once a quarter people track their macros, because it's really no different than at least once a month you should check on your investments. You,
Mhm.
like
Yep.
you say, making the
Yep.
analogy with your money, it's you're it's really kind of important that you know where you are.
Yeah.
But there are those people who believe that there are certain populations that it can be very triggering
Mhm.
and can spark or reignite an eating disorder. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts around that?
I think that there's so many different groups and so many different histories. And I always say, if you're complaining about it, this is an alternative for you to learn and educate yourself. If you're not complaining about it, then don't worry about it. This is for a
Sure.
group of people that really want to feel empowered and educated around food. Now, I understand that, the intimidation of tracking every single morsel going into your body can be very like overwhelming. But I think just giving yourself grace and recognizing again that it's important to know how much you're properly fueling your body. If you have goals it's a great place to kind of, like you said, check in, just like we have to go to
Yeah.
the doctor and check in and see how our blood is and things like that. I like to look at it as less intimidating like that, because it's not about eating too less or not about eating too much. It's about eating enough. Am I eating enough
Yeah.
for what my body needs? And there, when you do that, you kind of take out the mindset of like, oh my gosh, I have to restrict my food, or oh my gosh, it's, am I eating enough? And you're constantly asking these questions. I feel like it's a fail proof way to know exactly how much you're fueling yourself, especially if you have goals and you want to, have energy throughout the day and for your kids or for your business or whatever it is. It's just an
It's a
important way to
tool.
check in. Yeah, it's a tool.
It's a possible tool. And I think I like to tell everyone, you know yourself best. If the
Yep.
thought of tracking and measuring brings back negative feelings, or it triggers a past eating disorder, or maybe even disordered eating that you've struggled with, well, then you know yourself, and don't do it.
Hmm.
I also think that using a scale and weighing yourself is useful for some people. I don't find it useful. I
Right.
can't tell you last time I got on a scale
Yeah.
was when I went to the doctor. But other than that, I do think it's a really useful tool for many people, just not
Hmm.
for me. For
Yeah.
me, it'll ruin my mood.
Yeah.
Even though I know why I'm up 2 pounds today, I don't need to be in a bad mood over it.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Yep.
I don't care. It's just how my clothes fit that day, and that's enough. Okay, so now I've tracked my macros. I have a sense of what I'm doing right now. How do I know where I should be, or if I need to increase it? How do I know, other than looking on the apps and they give you generic information?
Yeah.
Or is that what I should go by in terms of like how much I should be trying to increase my intake?
Yeah. So typically we say, okay, whatever you are at right now, make sure you're eating at least zero point 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight. That's
Hmm.
minimum. Maximum of, 1 gram
One.
of protein per pound of body weight. And then from there, look at your carbohydrates. How many carbohydrates are you eating per day in grams? And how many grams of fat are you eating per day? So for your first, this is kind of like a very conservative way to start a reverse diet, is take your starting numbers and then 10% more of your carbs and 10% more of your fats. So those would be your starting numbers. So
Okay.
let's say, for example, your starting number was, 40 grams of fat per day. 10% of that would be anywhere from 43 to 45 grams of fat you'd start with. And then with carbohydrates, if you're, let's just say you're eating 100 grams of carbs, which is pretty low, but that's the whole point, is you're trying to increase your caloric intake. 10% of that. So about starting at about 110 grams of carbs, and then making sure that your protein is about zero point 0.8 grams per pound of body weight. That's going to be your starting point. The name of the game in reverse dieting is consistency. And this is
Mm.
where a lot of people get hung up, because they either start the reverse diet and their body immediately reacts to the spike in calories and they feel bloated, they're up a couple pounds, water weight, they're,
Freak
things
out.
like, they freak out. And
Abort,
yep,
abort, back to restriction. I must restrict.
exactly. And then they just, a week, 2 weeks go by and they're like, they give up and they go back
Mm.
to the cycle. So it's, again, really framing your mentality. I love, we both talk about the power of journaling and how important it is that we're stating our goals every day and reminding ourselves throughout the day of what our ultimate goal is. And if our ultimate goal is to finally feel at a healthy point in our relationship with food and being able to enjoy ourselves and sustain what we're doing and what we're eating long term, then staying consistent in your reverse diet is important. So with reverse dieting, it's kind of pointless if you're not staying very consistent with your numbers, because
Mhm.
if you're, kind of going off track on the weekends and here and there, you're very all over the place. It's hard for your body to grasp onto that number and really start to adapt to the higher number, aka once your body kind of levels out and maintains, then a few weeks, 2, 3, 4, depending on how slow or fast you want to go with your reverse diet, you can then do your next increase in calories. So in, another 10% of carbs and another 10% fat. And this is kind of just a basic principle in terms of reverse dieting. Obviously, if you have a coach, you can go a lot more in depth, but that's kind of like the
It's more
baseline.
not a customized number, it's a generic number. And I always want to remind people of that. You know,
Yeah.
what we're offering is general information for the average person, but each one
Yep.
of us is so unique. It might just be that you, when you track your macros, find out that your fat intake is off the charts and
Yep.
your carbohydrates are way too low. And so, you know, by working with a coach, that's where you can customize, or really just like we talked about at the beginning, is diving into knowledge and research to understand like where you should be
Yep.
based on
Yep.
what makes you feel good, not based on so-and-so's diet who isn't your age, doesn't
Yeah.
have your genetics or your dieting history or your physique goals or your exercise regimen. Like following someone else's exact prescription doesn't really make sense unless you're identical twins.
Right.
But we still have to give like general guidelines for people.
Hmm.
And so keep that in mind, everybody, but also consider like, if you're really serious about this, it is I mean, I can't imagine anything more important than investing in your own health
Yep.
and having it customized.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I
that really
mean,
does make a huge difference. For me personally, I know when I, you know, I guess you could call it a form of reverse dieting. Um, I realized when I was tracking my macros that my fat intake was where I thought it was, but my carbohydrate intake was way higher than what I was estimating in my head. The last time I, you know, tracked my
yep.
macros, I'm like, really now? Wow, have I been lying to myself? You know, so there I kept my fat where it was, but I was like, oh, I need to bring my carbohydrates down a little
Yep.
bit and I need to bring my protein way up. And it's just
Yeah.
crazy how in your mind you think one thing's happening when in fact it's not. So
Yep.
we've got these micro adjustments and we're going to start there. How long would we stay at, like, again, this general prescription
Yeah.
of a 10% increase? How long would we stay there?
Well, definitely for the first week, you at least want to stay, 3 to 6 weeks. I would say a good kind of like 4 to 5 weeks is a great place to kind of see how your body's responding, assuming that you're, within 1 to 5 grams of protein, carbs, and fats daily. And that's where meal planning comes in. Like, that's huge when it comes to reverse dieting. And when it comes to just learning how to fit your favorite foods in moderation into your daily intake, when you meal plan and meal prep, which I know a lot of people get really intimidated by, you're actually allowing yourself and you're enabling yourself to fit your favorite foods, because you're already pre-planning it into your day. So that's a huge key in making sure that you're in that 1 to 5 gram per day. And then I would say in about 4 to 5 weeks, check in with yourself. I always love to say, not don't just weigh yourself. Make sure you're
Yeah.
taking your progress photos. Make sure you're taking your
Mm,
body measurements, asking yourself, how am I feeling? How are my workouts? What's my energy level like? All of those things, those are all forms of measurement. And I think we oftentimes just think that the scale is the form of measurement, but there's so many other ways to monitor your progress. And so just keep that in mind with there. And then the goal is, again, to minimize fat gains while maximizing your caloric intake. So if you maintained or you gained maybe 1 pound or like half an inch, it's again up to you how aggressive or how conservative you want to go. I typically, when I first did my reverse diet, my very first time, because I was already 15 pounds up post stage weight, I gained about another 5 pounds more. But in that 16-week period of my first reverse diet, I went from 100 grams of carbs to 320 grams of carbs. So I was able to, 5 pounds, like additional 5 pounds, but really like increase my metabolic rate with the
mm,
increase in calories, allowed me to then go to, which I went on to do my second bikini show. I won my pro card. And at that point I was eating, I think the lowest amount I went in that second bikini cut was 1,700 calories. And then from there I reversed up. And so every time you reverse, your body and your metabolism gets stronger and your metabolic
mm.
rate increases. And so, Yeah. So kind of going back to checking
It's
in,
it's
you
like the opposite of what most women are doing, which is like they're cutting the calories, they're dropping the weight, they're gaining the weight, and their metabolism is still slow. And now they're trying to restrict again. Their metabolism slows down even further. They have to restrict even further. They're restricting even further, and they're not seeing the same results. And they're like, I don't get it. The last time I did this, I dropped a bunch of weight. Why? I guess I better just restrict harder.
Yep.
And then the metabolism just keeps saying like, oh, cool. I see what you're doing here.
I have a
You're
memory.
not giving us enough. And
Yep.
so, I'm your body, and I'm here to take care of you and make sure that you survive. So we'll slow
Yep.
your
Yeah.
energy burn.
And that's the beautiful thing. I think so many women are like, I am cursed with a slow metabolism. And I always remind them that our metabolisms are adaptive. So even if you feel as cursed with a slow metabolism, that was adapted over time, which means that you have the opportunity to reverse that adaptation. And your metabolism, your metabolic rate can go up, which is beautiful. So constantly reminding women that where you're at right now, your body is trying to take care of you and trying to make sure that you survive, which is a beautiful thing. But if you are miserable, then you need to honor your body and kind of put your short-term goal of fat loss on hold and really invest in your long-term investment of your metabolic rate.
Things that you and I both are in agreement on are just the importance of kind of phasing your diet, recognizing that your body is super adaptive, and it wants to plateau. It wants to create homeostasis. It wants to create that set point, and how important it is to kind of phase your diet. Now, I've heard you mention that you've done several phases of reverse dieting. Why is it, or what is it you use to determine if in fact you should be doing another reverse dieting? And then what are you doing just prior to the reverse diet?
Yeah. So I'll kind of go back into my story to kind of give you a little bit more context. So I dieted down, won my pro card. On stage, I was like, I am not doing another show. I am committing myself to sustainable health because this is just not sustainable. Even though I was eating a decent amount of calories, still tracking every single morsel, still doing every single minute of cardio and all of that. And so I was at my body was stage lean. Then I reverse dieted for 22 weeks post show, and I got back up to 340 grams of carbs. So I was even higher than my first reverse diet, and my body was leaner. So then, but at a point with your reverse diet, you get very high, and some people love it. They love eating a lot of food every day, and some people are like, "This is a lot of food." And so for me, I kind of tapered down back to my maintenance, and I just kind of like maintained there for a while. And then from there, I did a mini cut for my wedding. So I did a 6-week mini cut. And so it was but the beautiful thing was that my metabolic rate was so much higher now that I didn't have to cut low in order for my body to release body fat, because I was already telling my body like, okay, we're maintaining properly on, 2,100 calories per day. If you just cut down to 1,900 calories, which is still a very healthy amount of food, my body immediately was able to identify that, not as much food, and I immediately dropped body fat.
Wow.
So then I did a 4-week or 6-week cut, and then I kind of reversed back up. So it's all about like kind of what goals you have. Again, if you do a mini cut and then you want to either stay at maintenance for a little bit and then reverse up, it's kind of like every time, what I've realized though, that I've done a reverse diet, every time my maintenance calories gets a little bit higher,
That's so
just because my
nice.
metabolic rate, yeah, which is great. So now I'm like, I can, I don't stress about food, and I'm able to enjoy myself socially and not worry about it, and just not be in a caloric deficit, just chilling at maintenance and loving it. So yeah,
I
so to
think for
kind of,
so many women, they want to believe you, but they also think, well, but Julie, I'm different. My body doesn't work that way. I would never be able to do that. I would gain all the weight back, and I can't handle the thought of being overweight. I've tried that, and it scares women. It really, really scares them to think that there's another way, even though they may be so miserable doing what they've been doing. From what I, you know, to just kind of simplify what it is you've described, you've learned how to get leaner for whatever reason, an event, or I just feel like I want to get leaner, but to do so in a way that doesn't destroy your metabolism.
Yeah.
And that's the idea. And I think everything that most of us have learned or practiced most of our lives, especially those of us who are chronic dieters, is that you just have to keep cutting and cutting and cutting and exercising and exercising. And that's the only way. And, but despite the fact that we know from our own personal experience, it just slows the metabolism.
Yeah. Yep.
And this is
Yeah.
a wonderful alternative. And
Mhm.
I think I'd love to know how it has helped your physique and your training.
Mm. I mean, more food is more energy and I can lift more. I'm a lover of weightlifting, so I just feel stronger in the gym. I feel like when I have been in a reverse diet, you when you go into a reverse diet, you are climbing out of a caloric deficit into maintenance, and if you continue on your reverse diet, you're then in a caloric surplus, which allows you can still build muscle at maintenance, but when you're in a caloric surplus, you are really able to, build muscle. And so I feel like over time with allowing myself to dip into a caloric surplus, I've been able to build muscle, which then obviously when I lean out and I have lower body fat, you're able to see the muscle more, right? It's
Hmm.
not that I just magically get more muscular, it's that I've had the muscle and then I'm just slowly decreasing my body fat and you can now see it. So I would say, if anything, it just increases my energy in my workouts. I feel like it has helped so much in terms of building my physique and making making myself stronger in certain areas of my body. And I don't know, I am a huge believer in reverse dieting because I just remember how scary it was the first
Mm.
time. And now being on the other side of it, my hope is always to just remind women like, hey, I've been in your shoes. I know the fears that you have and I know the doubts, but look, there is like the end of the tunnel and it's whatever you make it, right? I could do another 3 reverse diets in my life. I have no idea what's to come, but the fact that I'm able to be where I'm at right now and just feel strong and energized and feel like I have all that I need to crush my workout is great. I love it.
So you'll phase that back in, just kind of, you don't have a set like, oh, once a quarter I'm going to do a reverse diet, or once a year I'm going to do a reverse diet. It's like whenever you decide, oh, I want to get a little leaner and I want to do a cut, then I'm going to increase, because I can't stay there indefinitely. If you try to stay there indefinitely, you're going to wreck your
Yeah.
metabolism.
Yep.
So the way that you're going to save yourself from that and not do additional damage is to just do a reverse diet afterwards.
Yep.
Let's
Yeah.
talk about, if we can, and I know we're running out of time here, but just really quick, can you rapid fire for us some of the ways this has improved your mental health when it comes to your diet and nutrition and exercise?
Oh my gosh. I just feel like my first reverse diet was really like the eye opener when it comes to how much I had labeled foods good or bad, and just recognizing how detrimental that was with my relationship with food. And I think that is a relationship that we so often put on the back burner. Like, we don't give it the time and energy or education or just, intentional focus to learn and develop, is our relationship with food. And I feel like from going through these reverse diets, it has allowed me the opportunity to feel more free when it comes to fueling my body with fun foods and allowing myself like that, ice cream or the popcorn or whatever, Pop Tart if I want it, but keeping things in moderation and remembering that I'm not just going to eat a diet full of Pop Tarts, but I'm allowing myself, if I want a Pop Tart, once a month, I'll have a Pop Tart. It's fine. And so I feel like it has allowed me the opportunity to just repair and restore my relationship with food, first and foremost. And secondly, just seeing my body at different stages and reminding myself that like this is evolution, this is growth, and choosing to love myself at every single stage and giving myself grace during, the first reverse diet where I was not in an ideal weight. I didn't feel good during my reverse diet. But again, it goes back to that mentality of like, okay, I'm going to choose to continue to invest in my long-term health. And I'm so grateful that I stuck it out because now I'm reaping the benefits of that. But yeah, I think just it's been a blessing in so many ways of just growing myself mentally and physically, and allowing myself the opportunity to grow and learn new things and not label foods as good or bad, and kind of just overall learn moderation.
I'd love that. That in and of itself should be motivation for people to consider doing it the right way,
Yeah.
and freeing yourself from that. I know for me personally, it's crazy how unsatisfied and unhappy I was with my body when I was malnourished,
Mhm.
when I was
Yeah.
over exercising and under eating. I was just never everything I felt like was wrong with my body. And the more I deprived myself of sleep and of nutrition and of rest, the more dissatisfied I was. It was just so crazy. And it's funny how the more I take care of myself and I'm eating enough calories, I'm getting enough sleep, I'm getting the right kind of rest, and my exercise is restorative. It's
Yep.
crazy how I just am so much kinder and more
Mhm.
complimentary to myself. Like,
Yes.
the other day we were walking to a restaurant and this is so funny, but I'm not bragging, but like I just would never normally do this. And I said to Brett, I go, look at my butt. Like that is a good
Yes.
butt. And I
Yes,
never ever
sweet.
would have said that, and I just
Yeah.
am like, that's a much happier place to be. It's not about being egotistical or bragging. It's just about, if you can't love yourself, it's really hard to love other people.
And if you can't love yourself, it's really hard to accept any sort of love that's given to you because you're constantly like denying it. Like, no, no. And that's a huge thing too. I work with a lot of women who are just married. And if you're feeling super insecure about your body, it's really hard to dive into a relationship and
Yeah.
like be able to give of yourself and receive the love that your spouse is wanting to give you. And so I think that's spot on. I mean, I feel like you truly cannot receive love until you first have loved yourself, and learn to appreciate yourself and embrace yourself. So that's beautiful. I love it.
That's a perfect spot for us to wrap this up. Julie, I know people are going to want to follow you, and tell us where we can follow you and how we can learn more about reverse dieting and maybe even working with you.
Yeah. So Julie A. Ledbetter on Instagram. And I also
Can you
have,
spell that for us?
yes, Julie, JuliEALEDBETTER. On Instagram, I love popping in, giving your daily dose of, post workout inspiration, tips, honest accountability. And also, I do have a free ebook. It's 39 plus pages and it teaches you exactly what your maintenance calories should be. So if you're kind of struggling and you're like, I want to know what my maintenance calories is, or you're just wanting to learn more about macro counting, it's a free ebook. It's called Macro Counting for the Everyday Woman. And that will give you everything that you need to know, kind of simplify everything that you need to know to start immersing yourself into learning how to properly fuel your body.
And where can we find that?
Yes, juliealedbetter.com and /free dash ebook.
Julie, thank you so much for
Thank
sharing your
you.
story and motivating us to take control of our metabolism, and in the process live a much happier, healthier life. You are
Thank you.
amazing. We are so lucky to have you.
Thank you so much.